thank you for putting these presentations together. This is so important and timely, and these slides that you presented, John, is really very, very informative. And also thank you for coming out. I know you are yourselves experts on this issue, and so this challenge, I should say. And so I think that's going to make for a very good discussion. What I like to do, how much time do we have? Okay, so
we start with about half an hour.
Okay, all right. So what I like to do is ask each of the panelists to make some general observations, and in your general observations, do talk a little bit about what you do. And then after that, there'll be just some questions among us, and then we'll open it up to people in the audience. Okay. So general observations, and you can comment on what John presented, or you can comment on things that you bumped into that this reminds you of, or whatever we discussed. And also, I'm sorry, identify who you are and what you do as well.
Great. My name is Marcy Osberg. I am a Tufts UEP graduate. Now I'm director of the Housing Innovation Lab at the city. John actually outlined exactly why our lab exists. The mayor saw that there is this growing gap of middle income, sort of the middle income housing, where we have about 20% low income units, and we have these luxury units being built, but we really are missing a lot in the middle. And so our lab was actually created to think of creative ways to solve that problem. So we test out different policy ideas, which is a little challenging in housing, trying to think about what is a test, what is a prototype. But the idea is that we can test those before implementing them full scale so that we can see how to improve them before we kind of implement them. So I think gentrification and displacement is a core issue that we think about and deal with a lot. And I think John highlighted a couple of really important aspects of it. I think the map that showed the bright reds and oranges really emphasizes how much of Boston is experiencing this pressure. And I think the components that actually create that the vulnerabilities and the amenities that they use to actually say this section is experiencing gentrification. That's really interesting to me because it shows that most of the areas that we consider at risk for gentrification are areas that, like John said, are changing. But I'd like to see a world where that change can be captured for the good for those who live there, because if it is an area that's not having as many city amenities, or there's not as good transportation, there's not as many jobs, that's not good for the people who live there. But if we then improve that, and that brings other people, and the change totally turns over the neighborhood, and then the people who we meant to be serving are no longer served by those improvements, that's a real problem that the city is constantly grappling with. How do we improve things and change things for the better and meet the needs of the people that live there without creating and causing more gentrification? So just initial thoughts.
Okay, and we'll be coming back to this as well.
So I'm Lydia Lowe, and I have been working as the co-director of the Chinese Progressive Association, and I'm transitioning into being the director of the Chinatown Community Land Trust. And we have been very focused on gentrification in Chinatown, and as well as displacement. I think that a lot of the things that we have been thinking about are similar to a lot of the things that John outlined. I guess we just want to see more and faster. I think, for instance, the Community Land Trust, as a model and as a tool, I think is incredibly important. And I think we need, the city to use more of its power to, get the public land, into the community's hands, to do things like, I think that inclusionary development could be even higher. I think there are things like looking at the inclusionary development units, and, trying to create situations where the inclusionary development units could go on a land trust so that you ensure that those developers don't kind of like weasel out of that later. Or things like doing, well, particularly with the federal situation, looking at real estate transfer tax possibilities and both, in order to increase revenue for affordable housing, but also to kind of slow down the speculation and be an anti-speculation factor. And then, I think that as the city is looking at redoing zoning and kind of doing these individual neighborhood plans, I feel like, zoning can be used in a way that really protects neighborhoods as well. But in order to do that, we have to really more structurally empower people at the neighborhood level.
Okay, Marvin Martin with the Greater Four Corners Action Coalition. I'm the executive director there. And I think for this discussion, I should probably also mention that I'm chair of the Action and Regional Equity, which is looking at this issue as well. I'm sure I have to be brief, not go into those details.
I have my little
Okay.
pocket watch.
But some of the stuff it might be better in later questions.
Okay.
So yeah. Anyway, I'll figure it out as I talk. So this question of gentrification is something that we looked at in the Four Corners area, which is in Dorchester, for those of you who know. And in particular, because of the Fairmount Indigo commuter rail line. And folks in the neighborhood felt that we needed to get stops along this line that ran through our neighborhood, which could get you from the Four Corners to downtown in 8 minutes, as opposed to the 45 minutes an hour it would take you otherwise to catch 2 buses from Four Corners to get downtown. However, we also were aware that, whenever there's some mass investment in public transit, gentrifying, and this is one of the indicators, right? Gentrifying conditions would follow. And so we had some conversations before we ever even, declared this campaign publicly about how do we address these issues. So we thought about land trusts initially, right? So the group of people went off to work on land trusts. We made the announcement, we wanted the train, and then some of the CDCs along the Fairmount corridor formed a collaborative, and they say, well, we want to work with you and try to buy as much of the land as possible, keep our speculative hands. So we said, well, that's going to be easier to do the separate land trust at this point, and it's right there. So we went with that option. So even with them buying up land, though, I think there's some general observations, some things that we have to consider, and I'll come back to some of the details later. But there's a few dilemmas that we face. One is, when you're in a neighborhood of, in the term is low opportunity, which is not a term I like to use. I prefer to use a neighborhood that has been barred from opportunity, right? So you want amenities, right? You want the train stuff. You want better parks, right? You want art galleries and stuff. Okay. Yeah. So, but at the same time, you also realize that when you fix up the neighborhood, then gentrification follows. I live in the South End, and the analogy I always use for on my block, as houses were being turned to condos, was with Pac-Man, and this dates when this was happening, because Pac-Man was around, and some of them might know what Pac-Man is. But this little finger go down and eats up things, right? And that's where they started at Tremont and came straight down, and they couldn't the building I was in. Right? And as I looked around in the South End to find something else, I was like, no, it's not going to work. So I moved to Dorchester. So So you want to see that. So the term that we actually use in Oklahoma is not just gentrification, we call it excessive gentrification, right? And so, and then we create all indicators what that means, but they're basically a lot of the same indicators that you mentioned earlier, John, about, sort of stores that are coming in and the people that you see. Because we actually got those too. I actually got phone calls and said, did you know there's a white family just moved around Florida, right? And then they came around and introduced themselves and they have become active in the neighborhood. But it was like, okay. And then when you see them walking up and down the street with a realtor, right? That's when you know this stuff is over, right? So to speak. And so the other dilemma, as a general observation, so we both were corners in this action. We like to think that to really be able to have a good conversation about housing stock and who you build housing for is that you have to have the right starting places. And so for us, we think that the AMI in most of the Boston neighborhoods, we'll be looking at 30%, right? Because that's where a lot of the folks in those neighborhoods, that's where their income level is. And so as we're pushing this, we also understand that, when I look at folks who are, my own staff or people in comparable positions, they make more than that, right? But they don't qualify for any subsidies, and they don't make enough to afford to live in Boston. And so, and this has come up as we have created these, for the Fairmount Corridor, we've been working on these transit-oriented development special protection zones. But this has come up as we talk to residents. They say, yeah, no, definitely 30%, right? Or you go with either, even if you go with Boston as opposed to the regional AMI, which Boston has stopped producing in some cases, or the neighborhood, which is lower, right? But at the same time, let's make sure that what people use different terms like workforce, goals, whatever, to make sure those people, because we're losing those people, and that's why the middle thing was to strengthen. Those are the people who are leaving. So that's what I don't do. But the only other thing I would say is our data actually shows that we're the fastest gentrified city. So I guess it depends on how you extrapolate the information. The other stuff that you have there, I think, pretty much the same. But that one, I think we do have we think is the fastest. But the biggest problem, also, according to gentrifying, is that we are number one in income inequality. And that plays a big role into it. And that plays a big role, particularly around race. So I'll stop there.
So, I've been to a lot of places in the city around the issue of gentrification. There's a lot of angst out there. East Boston, you mentioned Roxbury, Mattapan, growing areas. Lydia, do you think this is a basis to bring neighborhoods together around the structural empowerment that you made reference to? Mm-hmm. Boston has been known as a city of separate neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So is this going to be a defining issue, not around so much gentrification, but maybe the very politics and the very political future of the city, if that's possible?
I think so. And I think that, for instance, CPA is part of a coalition called Right to the City. And we started building a coalition initially around this Jim Brooks Stabilization Act, which is, making its way through the city council right now. But I think that the issue is actually a lot broader. And, people just kind of got focused on that one bill. But there's a need to look at all of these strategies, as part of that kind of right to remain call. And I think that the neighborhoods that you named are exactly the neighborhoods that should be worried. Because, from Chinatown's experience, when we look at East Boston, we're just like, get everything you can, buy up everything you can right now. And, fight every development that you can and give it all you've got because, in 10 years, they're gonna be exactly what Chinatown is today. So I think that, particularly, I think this is a really important year because it's an election year, and that we need to utilize that. And, I actually think that there have been a lot of really good things, in the current administration that have moved forward. But I think that we have to keep everybody's feet to the fire, and also, there's new people. We have some chance of, new faces in the city council, which would be welcome. Particularly, one of the things that we have been most disappointed with is that, we've seen some progress in transparency at the BRA and in, more emphasis on planning as opposed to just, project by project process development review. But we haven't really seen any fundamental reform about that community decision-making process, and that is something we're going to do.
Marcy, you said something that reminded me of a study that the Heinz Foundation actually funded on gentrification in certain parts of Roxbury. And Ace was part of that study, I was part of that study, Bob Terrell, Dr. Jen Douglas, who did her dissertation on gentrification in Jamaica Plain. And one of the things that we found when we looked at the data for the study area that Ace defined for the study was a tremendous infusion of white wealth, a tremendous infusion of white wealth. At the same time that overcrowding has gone up, at the same time that poverty, as John mentioned, has been, at the same level, unemployment. So could you talk a little bit about what the dynamic or what the process would be for an area that is being gentrified to also, in a sense, have the capacity to bring people together who are from very, very different classes. As John mentioned, gentrification has a class dimension to it, so you can't leave that off the table. So what are some of the things that we might be thinking about?
These are just ideas and things that I know that are being tried. There's coalition building, like you were saying, and just reaching out across the door and saying hello to your neighbors and getting involved. So just things as simple as that. But there's also more possibly like profound but very complicated ways for, I think, the existing members to take advantage. I guess a simpler thing is to make sure that new jobs that are created are going to existing residents. John mentioned that as well. But there's also potentially some opportunity for sharing the wealth generation. We've been thinking and theorizing about what would it be like if folks in the neighborhood could have a small piece of the pie. So maybe they're helping to get a business started, or even, just outside the box thinking, maybe they're actually part of the development. So they're putting in a small bit of money and they're able to then reap the rewards when that development happens. I know that folks at the Ujima Project are thinking about this, Aaron Tanaka and that group are really thinking about what would it be like to organize neighborhoods to be able to take advantage of the change and not just be observers of the change.
And we'll come back to some of this via the audience, okay? So I'll just have one more question for Marvin and then we'll open it up. The narrative around gentrification, for the most part, has focused on gentrification and displacement. But Marvin, you touched upon something that I think people are beginning to pay more attention to, and that is vulnerability. So if we focus only on displacement, and I'm not saying that we have, but if we focus only on displacement, is that not too late? Should we not also be talking about vulnerability? Because you saw things in the South End that probably today you have some similar feelings about. And if that's the case, is there any grounding to that for it? Is that something we could push? It's not just displacement, but it's also when people and working people and anyone, residents feel vulnerable about what's happening to their neighborhood. Should we respond to that with policy, even if the displacement hasn't taken place yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, but when I actually started at 4 Corners, the first thing I convinced my board to consider was to put together a comprehensive plan for the 4 Corners area. And at that time, no one was looking to move into Four Corners, right? Or for that much Dorchester. But, you know, I looked at what happened in the South End. I could see what was going on in JP at that particular time. And so I knew it was going to be a matter of time before it would hit Dorchester. And so, and at that time, you know, Menino was still mayor. And so he actually got his department heads to work with us to put together this plan, right? And it was, the city gave us everything. So at the time, nobody was thinking there was going to be any market pressure, right? So we know they gave us a lot of research and data and all that stuff. And they also saw to it that no public land exchanged hands while we went through the planning process. And they also, you know, as they said to me, without telling me what they were going to do, was like, we also discourage private land from changing hands. And so, so we were able to put together a plan that looked at, you know, not just housing, but transportation, traffic, everything. And, you know, once we finished the plan and we gave it to the city, then the city said, okay, well, you know, can we make this public now? Because probably what was happening, unbeknownst to us, was they were starting to get calls already, right? And so I said, sure. And so then we had this beautiful plan. I said, well, you know, this plan going to sit on the shelf for a while. But that first week, I got 3 phone calls from developers who said, oh, I understand you have a plan now. So we were out there to talk to the city. And they, you know, we had these empty parcels. We had empty parcels everywhere. And so they wanted to come and build on those empty parcels. But I think putting that plan together, right, and so not being reactive,
Exactly.
is something that we have to do. And the plan does have to include, you know, how do you know, create policies to make sure that those people who turn that neighborhood around stay there, right? So, yeah, absolutely. So the answer is absolutely yes. Even, you know, and it's a you know, it's a moving target. It's a work in progress. So even having done all that pre-planning and putting policies in place, still some stuff changes because administration changes. You got to go back to the drawing board, or you know, sometimes something else happens with, in you know, in the world of capitalism that can change your plan a little bit, your plans a little bit. So you have to keep modifying it.
Let me give, if you want to, the opportunity to make any comment that maybe you thought about as we were talking before I turn to the general audience. And John, I'll give you an opportunity as well. So any thought that you would like to share with the audience about this topic? And I'm not trying to push you. Okay, I won't push you. So I'm going to turn it over to the audience because I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to come back to these thoughts. And I'm also watching the time, and Penn keeps talking at me. So when I call you, so
8 o'clock. So.
oh, okay.
So that's
All right,
plenty of
good.
time.
So we can go back and forth. We can go, okay. So when I call on you, could you mention your name and you know what you do so everyone knows who we are? Bridget.
Yeah. Good evening, Bridget Wallace, UEP grad. I work for the state, but I also started a small nonprofit in Boston, but looking to do a new or present a new proposal around housing affordability and workforce development with the property that I purchased. Because I think people should look at the adaptive reuse of their own properties and what larger need or role your own property can serve, particularly in neighborhoods like Roxbury. So, but my question I think is more for John around, and as I mentioned, I live in Roxbury, around parcel 3, which is one of the largest publicly owned or public land that we have in Roxbury that's slated for a huge development. It encompasses the museum, just, you know, on paper, to some degree, it looks like a reasonable project, right? But we also have a private development that's going on. Kensington is the developers that's building on an old hospital radius, right? Mm-hmm. So why I'm setting this dynamic up is that you have public land and you have private, right? So we're always, there's this constant tug where you you're trying to address affordability, but then you have the private market that is definitely skewing things, right? Because the private market's going to do what it does. So how do we, with public land, ensure that it counterbalances what is happening in the private sphere, so that those public lands and that public domain is used to address the fears that people have? Because on my particular street, right, again, going back to the private market, a developer purchased the property, a home of an elderly person that passed on, but there's also a buildable lot. And he's looking to put 4 additional condos on that lot. And in total, if he is allowed to do that, that's $5 million on a lot. And it gentrifies my street. So again, there's this tension, and then people are looking at the quality of life for the folks that are on the street, because your taxes are going up, your real estate taxes are going up, some people are on a fixed income. So there's always these competing tensions, and much of it too is around quality of life, that people just have this angst around. How can we remain when you're competing against market forces, but it doesn't seem like the public sector is responding appropriately to what is happening in neighborhoods like Roxbury.
So
Sorry.
So the public has a very important resource.
Right.
Public land.
Right.
There's also the private sector that today in Boston is speculative, and it's going to become more speculative.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I get,
Yes.
so how would, are we doing enough in terms of using that very important resource that we have, our public land, to not necessarily monitor the private sector, but to get to balanced economic growth, sustained balanced economic growth?
Correct. Yeah. Thank you, James.
No, absolutely. So in general, the answer is yes, right? So public land is used very differently and is leveraged very differently to address the issues that were raised here today around gentrification and displacement. So as you say, not only does P3 look good on paper, it is in fact a good project. So, where you have in the Kensington,
Kensington.
thank
But in Chinatown.
you. Yeah, you just develop project. You have IDP, right? So it's 13%, right? Parcel 3, 18%. Where you have other projects, commercial space that are, any commercial space right now in the city is market, right? Parcel 3, affordable. It is also building out infrastructure so that Lydia doesn't have to, right? So it is taking on infrastructure costs so that we can create more and preserve more affordability around the Lydia projects. We're doing that together. It is creating an endowment for the African American Museum. All of that because, in fact, we're using a public asset where they're not paying for the land. They're going to pay a reduced lease fee. So there's no capital outlay, there's taxes, everything in consideration to try to get as much public benefit from that site as possible. And that'll follow suit on the other public sites. I mean, there's no question about it. Public assets should be used to move the public agenda forward. When you get to the private sites that you mentioned, like on your street and stuff, very different, less levers, and so we're trying to extract as much as we can, but particularly when you get to the smaller developments, 4 condos, right? 4 condos doesn't even hit our IDP, right? And so in particularly your street, you haven't seen $500,000 condos yet. You will, right? It's there.
No, he's selling them for $650.
What do you do? Right?
So there you go.
Yeah. So that's alongside a person who's been owning their home for whatever, right? Generations. And in our neighborhood, not making $52,000. The median income is a lot less than that per household. You've got somebody who can afford a $650 condo, right? And so I get it, dramatic. We have less tools and have to figure out ways to create more leverages for us to do stuff. But we also have the tension of just creating housing, right? and that I appreciate more and more every day. When we look at pressures, when we look at some of these indicators and we create indicators, one of the indicators is population growth and housing stock. And it's just easy math, right? We have not been building enough housing throughout the years to keep up with Boston's population growth. And so you can't have 30,000 new people come into the city in the last 3 years, 10,000 each year, and us not building enough housing for them, right? It's easy math. We're not gonna be able to keep up with the demand. So even in places where people have come to us and told us that they're gonna sell the housing for X, it's not like we can cap it. They end up selling it for more than X, because by the time they hit the market, it was just, they can get more, right? So we've got a serious problem for, for what people are willing to pay.
I'll give the panelists the first opportunity to respond and then back to you. Okay. Oh, I saw you, but I saw you too.
Well, I know that the city does treat the public land differently than the private land, but I feel like it could be more aggressive and really, we could say that, that public land in the neighborhoods, that the first priority needs to be, for as much affordable housing, as possible. To look into, yeah. But I think, and of course you have to look at every context and what's appropriate for that site, but I think, like for instance, and this project preceded, Mayor Walsh, but, I look at East Boston and there was a piece of public land there that was developed by a CDC that only has 20% affordable housing. To me, that's crazy. When you look at like what's happening in East Boston and how important that is to, do as much as we can now to make sure that those working class families can stay. And similarly, I know like there's the program of selling public parcels that are D&D owned, for people to build homes. Why don't we put those on a land trust so that we make sure that, all of those homes and that, that public resource that's being, given now to spur housing development, that we make sure that it stays, because we don't know what's going to happen when they sell them in the future.
So I totally agree with what you said at the beginning when you first talked about how nothing's happening fast enough, right? And we're trying different things, and I wanted to share just some of the things that we're attempting to make this better. So we're thinking about it in terms of a portfolio of different options, because there's not one sort of answer to this problem. So we're thinking about it in terms of we need some supply side solutions, and that's very true for especially the private market. How can we get more? How can we capture more value? So one of the things John mentioned that we're working on is a density bonus. So that goes beyond the IDP, the 13% units, and says, all right, developer, you're allowed to build a little more, which is good because we need more units. But in exchange, we want greater number or more deeper affordability in the units you're providing. So we're testing that out. Again, it needs to be faster. We need to do this more quickly. So supply side solutions. We also need market protections, because even if we're building thousands and thousands of units, there's no guarantee that there's not going to be this constant influx of new people coming in. So how can we protect as well as build more? So market protection, CLTs, limited equity co-ops, deed restrictions, income restrictions on units, all kinds of things around that. And yes, using public land the best we can in that way. And then a third piece maybe is what our lab's calling the degree of housing freedom. So allowing creativity in the market and homeowners like yourself to be able to do creative things with your own home to keep you there and to provide opportunities for others. So things like what we're calling a senior home share, where overhoused seniors can open up their house to match with renters who need cheaper places, or accessory dwelling units where you carve up a space within your home and rent it out to someone else. These other creative solutions that aren't as big, aren't as large scale, but maybe all together can make a difference.
Now, before I call on Angela, just a little footnote. Yes, the population of Boston is projected for big time growth, but we cannot forget that it's children of color in Boston who are growing at the fastest rate. 85% of all children 5 years and under in Boston are Latino. 85%, 5 years and under. Blacks, it might be a little bit lower than that. So at the same time that this population is growing from this level, we have neighborhoods, we have pockets of neighborhoods where all you see is young Black and Latino kids. That's all you see almost. That's tongue in cheek a little bit, but so that's part of the tension that we also have to stay on top of.
Great. Hi everyone, Angela Brown at the Heinz Foundation. And Professor Jay, actually thank you for kicking it off with the youth, because actually just yesterday I came from a session, youth participatory action research done by a youth of color in Roxbury with a EU researcher.
Linda Sprague Martinez.
My director of
Yes,
research
yes,
and evaluation.
In a very open-ended survey, what's creating a health crisis in your life, and there were things about mental health and so forth that we might expect, and a lot of results around gentrification, displacement and concern about who's boss them and things like that from this random survey of 100 youth. So it was very interesting.
So
anyway, I'll segue over to my question.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Just bringing the youth in the room. So I wondered if anything comes to you around, and thank you all for your comments and the ideas. I love the brainstorming and thinking around bigger, maybe robust strategies that get at some of, number one, the housing unregulated, what is being seen as unregulated or market, but in truth, the market is dictated by the rules of the road, right? We have a lot of levers that we could be using. Are we using all those levers? It's not just like the weather or something that happens. The market is driven by policy. And so things like policies around condo conversion, what circumstances those are allowed. I don't know the answer, just a question. What are the possible things we could be looking on that side? And then my second question is really around the intersection of housing and economic inclusion. And I think you pointed out earlier about the income issue and economic mobility issue, and how the data are a little hard to follow on some of that, but I think we know that people in the community are just concerned about chances for actually moving to higher paying and more just economic possibilities. I think I saw something, the city's median income for working households was $37,000
For individuals.
for individuals, so that's a pretty tough number.
Yeah.
35,000 for full-time, 25% of full-time workers earning less than full 35,000. I was challenged, by that, in 2016. So what are those kinds of avenues to allow for more economic opportunity and retaining folk in the city? I don't know.
So
Twofold question.
okay, so I don't know that we could answer that question fully, both those questions, but any thought about what Angela was?
I can start. So, you're right. The marketplace is the marketplace. We do live in America. We live in a society where private rights around land has been there forever, right? But there are, we do have to be innovative and come up with some strategies. Some are incentives, some are punitive, and some of the policies that we've looked at for the special protection zones that, we're hoping that they will lead to some control will slow down the market, right? And one of them that Lydia mentioned before was real estate tax transfer. The other one is tax abatements for both commercial and residential folks who keep their property values lower. We actually would like to see the IDP create rates of 25%, and we want to target allow those funds to acquisition, so to take homes off of foreclosure, and of course they would come with deed restrictions, so people would be able to rescue their home and then do whatever they want with them. protection around hard housing, because a lot of that is leaving the market, but leaving hard, and then go to the open market. So we need to retain that stuff. I already talked about the stuff around AMI, but of that 30%, we really think 36% of that 30% needs to be deep affordable. And there is that connection between the housing and stuff, and with economic development as well. And so, and so for us, it's not just the special protection zones. It's not just housing. There's transportation stuff, there's health stuff, and then there's job stuff in it as well. And first source hiring as one, which basically gives the residents to put a program in place for the residents along the corridor that has first crack at any jobs in the corridor, but also downtown, right? Because of where most people work. And then the other thing, of course, is fighting for these higher job standards, right? 37,500, whatever it is. I mean, you can't live. You can't. The fact is, if you're not making $60-some thousand, you really can't live comfortably in Boston on one income, right? So, unless you have some substitute. So, and so what we see is a lot of people living together in the same apartment, right? And as we go door to door in Four Corners, in some cases, there's so many names on the mailboxes, right? It's like, my God, how many people are in there, right? And so then we check with people to see if they illegally turned into a rooming house, and that's not, they haven't turned it legally or illegally as far as we know. So, we don't know what the conditions are. I do know that even years ago, when I was at the Street Neighbor Initiative, there were families where they did shifts. You got the bedroom because you work in the day and I work in the night. And so that's how people are making it. And obviously we can't continue to do that. And, I listened to your stats about the percentage of youth of color. And I'm concerned about, these projections about how many people are coming into Boston, given our cost of living here and the cost of housing. So I'm saying, well, who's coming into Boston when those of us in Boston are trying to leave Boston, right? And so that concerns me, because that tells me that if you're moving into Boston and there's not really a lot of good economic opportunities, then you're coming in already flush, so to say, right? Which is just going to drive up that, the large income inequality. But that last piece, that's just speculation.
So just
I don't have any data support.
No. The devil's advocate point, and then Dr. Vida. I'm a business. I want to invest. I want to lay roots in Boston. But you're asking for too much. So I'm going to go to, properties. I wouldn't go to, some cities, but but so there's the argument, the counter argument, that if we push too hard, if the citizenry pushes too hard, that will discourage businesses from investing in Boston. So that has to be part of the narrative. We have to be ready to respond to that and look at its accuracy or inaccuracy, but then propose some, argue why businesses should still come, even when we have a vision for Boston that everyone who lives here, regardless of their income, can live here in a decent way. But that's a strong argument that's used in public policy.
I'm Michael Lydia, married to Lydia. I hope you don't mind if I ask two related questions. So first is...
Well, Angela did, so...
So it seems like that, I think since the Ray Flynn, that the primary strategy that the city has had has been to allow or encourage growth and more development, and then to try to extract what you can from that development. And so, whatever the merits of it, the problem is that it relies on growth. But then when growth doesn't happen, then the city backtracks, or and then it all benefits the neighborhoods or whatever you're trying to do, collapses. So has you thought about what's going to happen? And we've gone through as President Obama has repeatedly said, the longest period of expansion, post-war, but eventually we live in a capitalist society with this economic cycle, so eventually it has to stop. So how can you encourage the expansion of affordable housing when things slow down? Have you thought about that? And so the other thing that explains that is that I know, like, your main, at least when you were, John, when you were pointing out the bar charts about compositions, you were mainly concerned about the loss of the middle class.
Mm-hmm.
But what struck me in those bar graphs was the huge expansion of the rich. And is there any thought about what happened? I mean, what happens to the city when it becomes more and more rich people in the city? How does the city change? Do we not care? We just want rich people in the city. Is there a way, I mean, assuming we want to control them, is there a way to more directly extract things for the rest of the people in the city? And I just leave, for example, in Vancouver and Toronto, you probably know this, is that there's a special tax on people who are buying, primarily foreign buyers who are buying units in luxury towers and aren't using them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so can we extract money from people like that?
Did you want to respond, John?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If I may, I just want to kind of go around a little bit
Okay.
with the response. Good conversation. I'll start with Michael. So, there's the millionaire tax proposal now in front of the state, right? I guess it doesn't pass. And we'll see. Right? If we can begin to create some momentum in that way, then you're right. Then there is a way to extract more. But we are in that conversation right now. That's live. We're in the conversation to see, how do those who are making more in our society give more fair share, right, of what they're making. DC's not helping the conversation, and locally, we'll see how progressive we are in moving it. I think it's a test. We'll see if we pass that. I think there is, you're absolutely right. So we continue to grow affordable housing. We have put in record number of investment in affordable housing, like bar any time in Boston's history. Why? Because we have the resources to do it. And then with CPA passing, we're going to even do more, right? So for the first time in a long time in Boston's housing history, we permitted more affordable and middle income housing last year than we did luxury. Right? So the tides are beginning to change.
People don't know that.
I say whenever I can, but you're probably right. So the tides are beginning to change. When they say that rents are beginning to stable in Boston, it's beginning to stable at the luxury level. It's dipping actually. It dipped, I want to say 17% or something, right? So rents at the luxury level have dipped, and overall rents, because of that, overall rents are stable, because that was such a big part. So people are no longer, people are not flocking to the luxury markets to make money, right? We think part of that is the production numbers, right? So a big tension between all of the proposals that people have put on the table is exactly the kind of tension I think James laid out, right? When we're at the city, we're looking at the number of people coming in. We're looking at pressures on our housing market. And we're trying to answer those pressures on our housing markets. And if we hit one sector of our We know if we hit one sector of our housing market really hard, it changes the comps on all parts of the housing market. And it changes what people think they can sell for and what they can build for, and a lot of stuff. This thing is all tied, right? So we think we're heading in the right direction. We also know if we hit it too hard and we stop production, we're in big trouble. Because it's not just Boston that's growing. Urban centers are growing all around the world. There's just the trend is people want to move next to amenities, they want to move next to public transit, they're owning less cars. And so you guys know the trends. So, but Boston, in fact, is growing at a rapid pace, sort of faster than most of our colleagues. We're growing 2 times the nation's growth expansion, right? But that's how cities can make it, right? If we go the opposite, which we did for a long time, right? Because we're at 800 residents, and we went back down to 500 and something, and so we're coming back up, right? So the question is, so I don't think we can stem population growth, but the question is then, how can we extract as much as we can from the fact that we got more wealth in the city, and the fact that there's production, right? So that we can actually help create the city that we want to be in. And so I think we have fun. Now, the population growth is actually of color. And the trend continues to be population growth of color, and in fact, it's immigrants, right? The population growth is not dominated by the wealthy, right? It's dominated by the working class. It's a really fascinating piece for now, right? I think it's going to change. Right? Now it is. So we got to continue to. We got to continue. The one part of the market that's slowing down is the luxury housing. So we've got to continue to create more workforce housing for the working folks who want to come to our city, create the kind of atmosphere we need to make sure that immigrants want to continue to come to Boston as we grow, providing the opportunities we need for people to be the tightest market, the tightest labor market in our city right now, sector of the market, in our restaurants, is the food, it's the service industry. It's the tightest. It's going up. Right now, the mayor's doing his push to get the wages up, because the minimum wage is way too low. Absolutely. Right? People aren't making more money, cost is higher, huge structural problem we have in our economy. Except a lot of the stuff you guys have in front of us, we need the state to change. We cannot change. I couldn't even do tax abatements today if I wanted to. Couldn't do it.
Even IDP.
Couldn't do even IDP. I can't do as a city owner.
Right. So
right?
multi.
Yeah, it's a multi-layered piece. The city has a lot less power than people really think we do, right? And so, I don't want to be defensive. I think these are all right ideas, and actually we're crafting language right now for the transfer tax, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I just want to say, the faster, more is right, right? Absolutely. But the challenges and the barriers are real.
So I saw several hymns. So let me pick the questioners now, just so I can manage time. Okay. 1. Did you have your hand up there? 2, 3, 4. And what about? But if you haven't spoken, feel free to jump into it. Okay. So who did I say was 1? Okay. I love this power, by the way.
You're doing well, James.
I love this power.
Can I do 5 if someone else doesn't have a question?
Yes, but I'm just watching time, so, okay.
So mine is more of a,
And you are, and
I'm definitely going to introduce myself, but I wanted to let you know mine is more of an observation and just informational as opposed to a question. And my name is Jackie Furtado. I actually want to talk directly to John Barros really quick, because back in the 80s, I was standing right next to you when you were standing your ground for in the whole foundation of DSNI. I know you don't know who I am, but it's funny how our paths come back together now in UEP, and it wasn't until UEP that I actually realized what we were doing when the professors actually showed that video, so it was amazing. I am a UEP graduate, by the way. So I just wanted to say that. And when you come into the office, I actually work on the governor's cabinet for the state, and I work for the Secretary of Economic, Health and Economic Development, and I'm in my work, and I see John passing by, and it's like, I've always wanted to say something, but it's not my place, it's not my thing. I let them lead into things. What I wanted to say there, when it comes to the state, one of the things that I learned in dealing with programs and things like that for cities and towns, first and foremost, we have to remember that we're a home rule state. Every single city in town has its own law and government. We can't actually tell a city or a town what to do. We can't actually, we can only talk to you once you come to us. And one of the things that I like on our secretary office, we have many tools. If they apply for infrastructure, I work directly for Mass Works program. There's many programs under the secretary. I'm a Mass Works project manager. And what I do is I review with other state agencies if when a city or town applies for infrastructure funding, we review that. And one of the things we've learned is that a lot of cities and towns don't realize how much state money there is available. There's no one that sits everyone down and say, I want you to pull this, I want you to pull that. HDIP is a housing development incentive program. Many developers in many cities and towns can actually use, this can be used as it's an incentive pretty much, it's a tax incentive. It's like a tool pretty much to sort of stabilize your community.
So there are a lot of resources that we need to look at.
There's tons of resources, and all I'm trying to pretty much say and pull together is that based where I sit, there's a lot of things that are being missed at the city and town.
So it sounds to me like in our community organizing, we have to reach out to people like you and state government. But
I want to give them kudos because that tool helps to underwrite a lot of the affordable housing we do in Boston. And so Mass Works is really important.
So only because of time, let me ask you to leave it at that. Okay, but that's an important point that you're making because sometimes you don't have the resources that are there. Who did I say was second? I might make him third. So Fed, Joe, and then, oh yes, okay.
Okay, yeah, no, I was going to channel we have a UEP field project team that's been working this spring, and their final report is due Friday, so I imagine they're a little busy right now, otherwise they would have been here. But working with the Greater Boston Community Land Trust Network, Lydia and Marcy were both helping to guide that project. And I was just going to channel kind of two things that came out of their work this spring, because they were looking at, what are the different ways that you can get privately owned homes into permanent affordability. So in those areas where people have owned for generations, and they're looking at, well, I can cash out, and be a millionaire versus how do we keep this being an affordable resource. And I think one of the things that struck them very early on in looking at this issue, because they were tasked with, what are different ways, what are the strategies that are available, and how do we help promote that? They felt that it was really tough to look at just from the perspective of the homeowner, right? And I think all of us know why, because there's, like you said, those competing tensions, right? How do you say, I want to preserve the neighborhood, I want to do my part, but I'm sitting on this gold mine, and I have to think about, future generations of my family. So they hit that right away, and what they came back with was just this idea. I think Lydia already mentioned it. I mean, this idea: how do you actually work on the broader slowing down the market, right? The market, if it's so hot and getting hotter, what are the different mechanisms to cool it off? And some of those, I think, are doable at the city level with some of, speculation taxes of different kinds, capital gains taxes. But I was going to say the other thing to bring into the room, which our students didn't do, this is a whole other area, is I think there's a whole fight that's really about at the federal level that has to be, right? Because I think Angela's totally right. The market is constructed out of all these policies, but if we're only looking at the city or looking only at the city and state, we still have only limited, right? I mean, the people coming to Boston include, right? We're global, right? I mean, a lot of these, the elite coming here are not, they're coming from other countries.
How would you propose slowing down the market?
What's that?
How would you propose slowing down the market?
I'm just naming that as something that we have some limited things. I'm sure people have good ideas.
I have an idea, but I want to mention.
I'm just gonna. I'll stop there. That's all I just want to share that reflection.